All right, we are now recording. Just really wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page and then also to have this kind of recorded session so I would be able to post it or share it with families that aren't able to join us this morning. But I know that you all may have some questions. Hopefully, the presentation answers those. But if there are still questions afterward, I'm just going to ask that we put them in the chat and we'll kind of tackle it after I make it through. It's just a short slides of how we do everything. So if you're just joining us, good morning. I'm Ryan, the principal here at McAuliffe. I'm tired because it's Monday and I have 3 kids, so I'm right here with you, parents. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right. So the 3 things, like I said, we're gonna cover today are just an update on contact tracing and what contact tracing is like at McAuliffe or at schools in our district. How we approach the student quarantines and the guidelines for student quarantine at McAuliffe, and then what our current guidelines are that we have from the California Department of Public Health as far as what would trigger a school closure. So you'll hear me say CDPH a lot. That is the California Department of Public Health. That is the governing body that our schools and our school district follows. And we work closely with the Orange County Healthcare Agency, the Orange County Department of Education, and the California Department of Public Health. But sometimes what is said, like from the CDC, is not necessarily true of the CDPH. And so my learning has been that just because CDC says it doesn't mean that we adopt it until CDPH says it. And so that's kind of been a little bit of the differences in maybe some of our practices or things that maybe you hear about in the news or separately. We wait and follow the California Department of Public Health. So contact tracing and student quarantine. So what happens when there's a positive case at McAuliffe? As you've all seen, and I kind of gave a summary in my email on Thursday, we have had 10 student cases at McAuliffe, and fortunately, we are able to say, based on our investigations, that none of it was related to an on-campus transmission or an on-campus spread, which means that the protocol and the safety procedures that we have in place here on campus, the masks, the desk shields, the spacing in classrooms, all of those things seem to be working. However, as everybody knows, we can't control what happens outside of school, and we have kids that are still involved in sports or still see family. And all kinds of other things. And I'm not here to say that that is wrong or not what we're supposed to do, but we can confirm that all of our positive cases have been, to the best of our knowledge, have been contracted outside of our campus. But we did go from 0 cases until after Thanksgiving break. We've had 10 over the last couple of weeks, and that has felt like a lot. Some of them are in the same household, which is to be expected. But this is kind of the process that we follow when we have a confirmed positive. So a confirmed positive is somebody who takes a positive test or takes a test and is confirmed to be positive for COVID-19. We contact all of our teachers immediately who have the student in class, and we consult their seating charts to start our contact tracing. And so me and the admin team, we sit with all of the students' class seating charts, and we map out exactly where that kid has been. And then we go and we have a conversation either in person or over the phone with the teacher and confirm who that student has been sitting by, if the desks are within 6 feet of each other, if for any reason they were partnered up with somebody working on something, or if they, in drama had been part of a scene working with other kids. And we look for anybody who's been within 6 feet. You can see over here on the right, a close contact is anybody who's been within 6 feet of a confirmed positive case for more than 15 minutes anytime during the 72-hour period before the onset of symptoms or a test administration. So we trace back 3 days from the onset of symptoms or from when they took their test that ultimately ended up being positive. That's why in some cases, we end up calling and saying, hey, your child was in close contact on November 30th. Yes, I know now it's December 7th, but they took their test. Their test took 4 days to get them their results. And unfortunately, now we're having to backtrack 72 hours before they took their test. And so that's why the timeline feels a little bit funny in some cases. But we have to go back 72 hours before they ever had the scratchy throat or any symptoms that they are associated with COVID-19. After that, we contact the student directly, Mrs. Vienna or I call, and we ask, who have you been hanging out with? Do you have any carpool? friends? Is there somebody that you've been around on the weekends? Do you participate in any outside activities? And we make a list of their close contacts from there. Then any family who's been identified as a close contact gets a personal phone call so that we can explain what the parameters of the quarantine are. So whether you were in a carpool with a confirmed positive, or your child happened to sit in a desk within 6 feet of a confirmed positive in class, we give you that phone call and we try to, without revealing who the student is, we try to explain a little bit about what the parameters are that they were in contact, meaning your child was in class with somebody who's been confirmed as a positive case of COVID-19. They now have to quarantine for 14 days. The 14 days starts the day after the point of contact, and then it's 14 solid days and a return to school on the 15th day. So it's really more like 16 days by the time you add it all up. So it's the day after the point of contact, 14 solid days, and then they can return on the 15th day. So those close contact families also get a separate email confirming and with the dates of their quarantine. Then we notify the low risk families in writing. So the low risk families, and many of you have gotten those emails, are just families that are in the same class as a confirmed positive case. And so if you're in Mr. Lyons period 2 and there's a confirmed positive in there, but your child doesn't sit anywhere near the confirmed positive, you'll still get the low risk letter explaining that you were in class Mr. Lyons period 2. Now we send that letter to cohort A and cohort B, but we put in the letter if the child was in cohort A or cohort B, so that you're able to, feel out the level of risk that you've assumed. And so if the confirmed positive is in cohort A, but your child is in cohort B, yes, they were in the same classroom on the same day, and we don't have time to do a thorough disinfecting between cohorts. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of that. But we also want to point out to you that the child was in a different cohort. Then we notify the school community in writing, and you've gotten plenty of those messages as well, where we just explain to you that we have had a student with COVID-19 on our campus, and we want to make sure that the community is well aware of it. So there's 4 letters that go out. The staff gets an email in there as well. And we get those 4 letters approved by the district office. And we also send copies of those letters to the Orange County Healthcare Agency, the OCHCA, if you're writing this down. I see some of you taking notes, so that they're aware of our contact tracing as well. So that's a confirmed positive. I don't know. I just want to make sure that the chat is enabled. I think it is. Has anybody tried to write anything in the chat? Hold on. Oh, yeah, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so it's working. All right, cool. Onward and upward. So here's what happens when a student has to quarantine. So during a quarantine, like I said, it's 14 full days from the point of exposure. The school provides a detailed list of how the student will be supported during a period of quarantine. And so Mrs. Olmstead, our school counselor, is heading up the academic support. And so she emails every single family individually with a list of how their student will access instruction and instructional support in every single class. So it looks different in every classroom. For example, Mr. Lyons, and I don't know this to be a fact, but I keep using him as an example. Sorry, Brett. But Mr. Lyons might not be live streaming his classes, but what he might be doing is recording all of his lessons and posting them on Google Classroom. And so Mrs. Olmstead will write that in the email, where I know Mrs. Acuna is live streaming her English classes. And so Mrs. Olmstead puts that in the email so that parents don't have to contact each teacher, and so that teachers also don't have to respond to every different family that's having to quarantine. So that way it's in one succinct location, so that during your period of quarantine, you know how your child will get support academically. On Wednesdays, they can also access Distance Learning Wednesdays just like they normally do. Any materials that need to be picked up will be coordinated through our attendance office. And so we have an outside window. Some families come around. We do ask, though, if your household has been exposed to COVID-19, we arrange for like a drop off, and we put the materials out on the curb right when you're coming up so that you can just grab them if you're able to. Student receives attendance credit. So they're not marked absent. They're coded with the same code that we would give for a student who's on independent study. And as I shared earlier, each teacher does approach that support differently. Many are live streaming, many are recording lessons, many are offering Zoom like office hours to reteach a lesson or to go over anybody who has questions. And I'm really proud of my teachers because if you can imagine all that they're balancing, it's been really difficult for them to um, also figure out the best way to support kids who are at home with their kids that are in class. It's very different than a distance learning Wednesday where everybody is online. So setting up a camera and navigating that is really tricky. And so we do say that the expectation is a little bit lower as far as student participation when you're home on a quarantine because it's difficult for a teacher to manage the chat, the video, as well as kids in a class. And so, really, those teachers that are live streaming, students are just kind of like a fly on the wall, getting to maybe do a share screen and see the presentation and hear their teacher and hear their classmates. But their participation from home is limited for obvious reasons. But I do want to say that our teachers are really working really hard to be supportive because they know that in a lot of cases of kids that have to quarantine, that it was outside of their control and maybe that kid was doing everything right and just happens to be sitting next to another kiddo and it's no big deal, but we want to make sure that we support and help that kid get through their 2 weeks where they're not seeing their teacher as much. Quarantine return date. So we currently are following the 14-day quarantine rule due to restrictions from the California Department of Public Health. So I've gotten this question a lot. CDC did shorten the period of quarantine to 10 days for somebody who is asymptomatic, which is the case with most of our students when they're quarantined. However, the guideline when adopted by the California Department of Public Health, they did adopt the 10 days, but they said on day 11, 12, 13, and 14, you have to guarantee that student, that close contact, is 6 feet apart from all of their classmates for those last 4 days until they get to day 15. So at the middle school level, that's really not feasible. We can't, obviously, if we could keep everybody 6 feet apart, we would be doing that from the beginning, but not every classroom is large enough. Not every classroom has the space for that. And we also don't want to single out every kid that was a close contact by making them sit in an alternative location for their 4 periods a day of instruction. It just doesn't feel like what's best for kids. And so we're continuing to follow the 14-day rule until we get a better answer on how to make that more practicable for our kiddos. Thank you. And I know that part's a little bit tricky and people have been asking that question a lot. I wish that it could be 10 days and we could just return back to normal because 14 is killer. However, because of that added restriction, it just doesn't make sense for us to bring kids back after 10 days if they can't sit in their classroom with their peers. So when would a school actually close? I just want to point out that we do continue to operate safely. We follow all safety protocol. We have personal protective equipment that exceeds the guidelines set for us by the California Department of Public Health. We communicate every single case and every close contact with county officials at the OCHCA and OCDE. We collaborate with the healthcare agency for all contact tracing. They read our letters. They ask how the kid was in close contact. They make me fill out all these forms. Our poor school nurse, if you guys know Miss Mellon and you want to send her a kind email, she's working like around the clock. She has to do 5 forms for every kid that's positive or a close contact, and she's drowning in paperwork. But we also believe that that's important to make sure that we're following the right protocol and guidelines. There's been no evidence of any on-campus transmissions district-wide, so not just at McAuliffe, but district-wide, there's been no evidence of on-campus transmissions. And as you all know, we continue to use masks, death shields, distancing, smaller cohorts, limiting student movement, air filters in every classroom. We have strict disinfecting protocol, and on and on and on. We continue to hammer those safety regulations, and even more so now that we've started to get cases, our staff is acutely aware of how important it is to make sure that our campus is safe for everybody who's here. So what would trigger a school closure? Currently, we continue to follow the California Department of Public Health, the specific metrics that they've set forth on a school closure. If 5% of a school population, that includes students and staff, are positive for COVID-19 in a 14-day period, the school must close and return to distance learning for 2 weeks. If new directives come up and that prompts us as a district to reconsider our plans, we'll obviously keep the community well informed. But currently, McAuliffe is just at 1%. And it would take a lot to, we have roughly 1,000 people here. It would take a lot to get to that 5% threshold within a 14-day period. So already cases will be coming off of the dashboard because once a student finishes their 14 days of quarantine after their positive test, they're no longer up on the dashboard and they can return to school and no longer be considered part of that 5% that test positive. And so we're nowhere near that at this point. And that's not to say that other directives won't come up or that something might change. But at this point, we're not near that 5% mark. And those are our current guidelines that we have. And we feel that as we continue to operate safely, many families, well, all of the families that are here have chosen for their kids to be in school here. And so there's also a bit of a responsibility there to honor the requests of the families that are choosing to have their kids enrolled in our hybrid program. I get asked a lot if we're considering doing distance learning for the weeks after winter break. At this point, we are not. I have not heard that, and we have talked about it as a district. Again, because we feel that we do have an obligation to honor the request of the pathway that parents have chosen. And so we do our best. It's not perfect, but that is currently the guidelines that we have. All right, so that's it for my slides. So I'm going to go over to the chat and see what questions we might have bubbling up. I'm seeing Jesse Stanley, the videos or live video is a great idea. That would solve so many challenges with the quarantine. Absolutely. So wanting to give kids that access, especially like in their math class, or if English is reading a difficult core novel, we want to make sure that they're able to have access to that information. Mark Elliott, how will we be able to access recorded video? So this recorded video I'll post. I don't know if that's the one you're talking about. If you're talking about classroom recorded video, that's going to be shared out through Google Classroom in most cases. But if your child is quarantined, Mrs. Olmsted communicates directly with you how a family is doing that. Because every teacher handles things a little bit differently in their own like class management, technology workingness. That's very official. I'm glad that got recorded-ness. What can we do if we would like to do 2 weeks distance learning for the 2 weeks returning from Christmas break? That's a great question. And I have been asked that as well. We're not encouraging that necessarily. However, we recognize that these are uncertain times for families and that there is a lot of concern around returning, or maybe you are traveling for the holidays and you need to self-quarantine. We will support that student like we would a student who has to be quarantined with our different options for accessing content online. So again, some teachers are live streaming, some are recording lessons, some are sharing it out through Google Classroom. That's going to be done. That level of support for a student that's self-quarantining, if you're just thinking of like, we're only so many people. So if you're choosing to keep your kid home, unfortunately, we're not able to get you that support as fast as we are for a kid that we are saying you have to stay home. So for example, Mrs. Olmsted, when she's outlining instructional support, the first people she's going to are the kids that we're making stay home because they've been in close contact. The second wave of kids are the families that are choosing to maybe keep their kid home. So the support looks a little bit different, but we are working on it. Lauren Nakata, does the total number of students listed on the dashboard include the students in LaSalle at home? I believe it's separated if there was a kid in LaSalle at home, because the kids in the dashboard, like for McAuliffe, those are just kids that are present on campus. Can you give us the current breakdown of outbreaks in each cohort? You know what, Bill? I don't know, to be honest with you. I've tried to specify in each community notification, but that day when we had 4 and I sent one notification for all 4, there were 3 students in cohort B and 1 student in cohort A. So I don't know if that helps, but that's what I have right now. And if you'd like to email me, Bill, I can share that information, but I would have to go look. Renee Price, how are due dates handled? If a student is ill, not just quarantined, are they given extra time to complete their assignments? Absolutely. Our teachers have had a phenomenal amount of grace with extending deadlines, with making different accommodations for taking tests and quizzes. And so they are absolutely being accommodating with due dates because they recognize most of my staff are parents in this district. So and some of them have had kids that have to be quarantined. And so they definitely recognize the stress that that puts on a student and on a family. And so they are being very flexible with due dates. How can I enroll my child to online classes now that the date has passed? I feel it's necessary now. So you're going to want to contact the Los Salad Home office directly, Ramos, with that question. If you're interested in switching pathways to our Los Salad Home pathway, you're going to want to contact the Los Salad Home office to inquire about being put on the wait list or what their process is like. And I know that they're still taking those phone calls. So you just call the district office and ask to be connected to Los Salad Home. Allie Hale, what if there is a close contact with a sibling and you want to keep your whole family home to be safe? Can independent study be set up? Great question, Allie. That's going to follow the same guidelines that I kind of said earlier for a family that chooses to keep their kid home. We can work to support that because we recognize if your sibling has been in close contact, you may want to stay home. And so we would follow the same procedures that we're doing for families that are being forced to quarantine. Vicky Roberto, I think, yep, I'm right there. Are you planning to go traditional second semester after the elementary schools? Hope not. Unfortunately, fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know what the right terminology is. I feel like the traditional schedule is a little bit of a pipe dream at this point, just with the spike in cases. Who knows? I mean, we don't currently have any plans to return to like a full day instructional schedule. However, I don't want to say I feel like 2021 is going to come with this bursting ray of sunshine and hope, and everybody's going to be good. So let's cross our fingers for that. But currently, no, we don't have any plans to do that. Lauren Nakata, how many students are currently quarantined at this time? I do not know, Lauren. I'm sorry, I don't know that. Awesome. Yes, I'm getting a thank you message. I appreciate that. Yes, happy to help. I know that it's scary and uncertain, and so that's just why I wanted to offer this to families that were interested, and also to have it recorded so that families could watch it at a different time as well. We're trying our very best, and we're trying really hard to be transparent and really hard to be communicative, but it's definitely not perfect. I've heard some preliminary info about return to music outside. Do you have any details on that? Yeah, I do. So currently, the guidelines do allow for singing outdoors with students that are 6 feet apart. And so our choir has started being able to do that. And then band, current guidelines are allowing for band to play outdoors. And so our instrumental music department, district-wide, is working on how to facilitate that. It's not the easiest thing in the world for every kid, every period, to take their instruments outside, find a place to play that's not going to disrupt the learning on the rest of campus. And so we're working out how that's going to be for now, but we do have the clearance to get it started. Lauren Danino, your own open communication is so appreciated. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that. Any plans with vaccines, teachers or students mandatory or providing records? I have not heard any guidance on that yet, Shawnee K. To answer your question, I don't believe that anybody has had any guidance on whether or not the vaccine is going to be mandated or if their record is going to be provided at this point. I believe that's a lengthier process, and at this point, we're not there yet. Thank you for the positivity and the thank you, Arson. I think I'm saying that right. We appreciate it. And yes, if you have any questions outside of this meeting, I'm always available, but I'm going to hang out for probably another minute just to see if anything else trickles in. But that's it for my presentation. We do have the FAQ that we've posted and has been sent out and will be updated regularly. And I'll add some of these questions onto it just because I think that it's great to have one document. It's actually really helpful for me because then I can email it out when I get a question. But that FAQ is there and available. But we really appreciate all of you and your partnership. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you trusting us with your kids, both in person and online. It's a responsibility that we take very seriously, and we will continue to make sure our campuses are as safe as possible. So thank you for all that you do. I'm going to let you all go now. I am seeing a question. Is there a way to view the info? Yes, we're recording it and sending it out. No problem. I have not heard that there's a mask with a mouth hole. No, so that currently wouldn't be allowed as far as I know, Ramos. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Have a fabulous afternoon and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Enjoy your time off. We look forward to a rest. Thanks, you guys.